हरे कृष्ण गुरु महाराज, प्लीज एक्सेप्ट माय हम्बल obeisances. गुरु श्री प्रभुपाद, सभी भक्तों को मेरा सादर प्रणाम है। तो आज हमारे बीच बहुत ही विशेष भक्त आज का जपा टॉक देने हमारे बीच उपस्थित है। जपा टॉक का समय हो चुका है और आज रविवार है, तो हमारी टॉक अंग्रेजी में होगी। और टॉक प्रारंभ करें उससे पहले एक महत्वपूर्ण अनाउंसमेंट है आप सभी के लिए। आज गुरु महाराज जी के द्वारा श्री श्री राधा रास बिहारी मंदिर इस्कॉन जुहू में श्रीमद् भागवतम क्लास दिया जाएगा ठीक 8 बजे। तो आप में से जो भक्त सुन रहे हैं, मुंबई में है या मुंबई के आसपास है और आपके लिए संभव है रास बिहारी मंदिर आना इस्कॉन जुहू, तो आप जरूर आइए और गुरु महाराज जी का संग सानिध्य व दर्शन भी प्राप्त कर सकते हैं। श्रीमद् भागवतम क्लास 8 बजे। एंड टुडे वी हैव अ वेरी स्पेशल devotee. Today marks a very special, in a way, day. It's Sunday and we usually have Japa talks in English. So we have His Grace Adbhuta Hari Prabhu from ISKCON Juhu, and Adbhuta Hari Prabhu is a disciple, glorious disciple of His Holiness Srila Sridhar Swami Maharaj, who happens to be a very dear friend of our Guru Maharaj. And also Adbhuta Hari Prabhu is one of the personal servants or last personal servants of His Holiness Sridhar Swami Maharaj. And Sridhar Swami Maharaj and Guru Maharaj has a special connection in terms of being Srila Prabhupada God brothers. And they also have a special connection with Sri Sri Radha Ras Bihari Temple ISKCON Juhu. In a way, they both joined here, and when Guru Maharaj learned that Sridhar Swami Maharaj is receiving sannyas or will be receiving sannyas, is recommended for sannyas in Sri Vrindavan Dham, and Srila Prabhupada was approached by Guru Maharaj by saying, me too, me too. Guru Maharaj approached Srila Prabhupada for sannyas, and Srila Prabhupada finally said, okay, Sridhar is taking sannyas in Vrindavan, you join Sridhar. So that's a special connection Guru Maharaj has with Srila Sridhar Swami Maharaj, the Jolly Swami of ISKCON. And today we have his dear disciple, His Grace Adbhuta Hari Prabhu, who happens to be a IYF director of ISKCON Mumbai. He's an electronic engineer by profession, or he was in his previous ashram. And Prabhuji has traveled all around the world distributing this divine knowledge of Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And also he has visited very reputed IIT and IIMs of India. So we have special fortune today to have his association, Adbhuta Hari Prabhu. So Adbhuta Hari Prabhu, we have this conference running or operating from past 5+ years now. And there are around 2,000 to 3,000 devotees eagerly waiting for your association and for the nectar. So every morning we do this Japa session beginning from 5:30 till 6:45, and 6:45 to 7:15 is talk, and every Sunday we have English talks. So today we have great fortune to have you, Prabhuji. Over to you. Hare Krishna. You need to unmute. Prabhuji, you are mute. Kindly unmute.
Minor detail. Right, thank you very much for inviting me for this discussion. And very grateful to Lokanath Maharaj to give me this opportunity to share some of my realizations. And today's topic is how to value sacrifice of Srila Prabhupada and his disciples. So I will try to elaborate a little bit on this subject. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Chalaka Chakshramilitamina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashta Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharya Vishesha Srinivadi Paschati Vishitari Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. We are at a very place which is an epitome of such kind of sacrifice that has been performed simultaneously by Srila Prabhupada and his disciples at the Juhu Hare Krishna land, where so many difficulties had transpired, and it has become known as a place of a great struggle, of a great sacrifice that has been performed in order to glorify Krishna in order to glorify Shri Radha Bihari. So it is very significant that also we are discussing about this subject, and then we are at the very place which is so known throughout the world in the devotional community for the sacrifice that Srila Prabhupada had performed in order to fulfill his promise. And his promise was that, yes, I will build you a temple. And Shri Radha Bihari expanded from here. You know, the struggles. Lokanath Maharaj himself has written a book about these early days where devotees have performed so much sacrifice to please Srila Prabhupada, and therefore Srila Prabhupada also, of course, performed so much sacrifice to please his spiritual master. And we see that principle of sacrifice is just so prevalent in the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, and as a essence of spiritual practice, because sacrifice is natural quality that it's manifested when we have love for someone. So this is how we express our love. We sacrifice something. It's a personal sacrifice. We sacrifice our convenience. We sacrifice our time. We sacrifice our assets, facilities, everything for sake of someone else. And that is only possible on the level of love. Otherwise, it is just some kind of austerity. There's a big difference between austerity and sacrifice. Austerity, most often it's imposed, and one has to just tolerate or burn one's karmic reactions. But sacrifice is something that it's willing. It's like just like a penance. It's something that also manifests in so many wonderful results, realizations for the individual who performs such a sacrifice. But of course, the devotional line devotees are not interested in anything personal. They're just interested in others. They're interested how to perform so many different kinds of austerities as such for sake of others. Just like once Srila Prabhupada was asked by a reporter that, how come you're traveling so much? Because we know Prabhupada traveled 14 times, I guess. I think it's 14 times throughout the globe. Every day almost, as it is said, sleeping under another tree. So he traveled so much. So that person asked, how come, why are you traveling so much? So then Srila Prabhupada replied, said, so that you don't have to travel through 84 like species of life. That's why I'm traveling. So that's Srila Prabhupada's mercy. So we know how much inconvenience and sacrifice Srila Prabhupada performed, because that was the order of his spiritual master. You know, in our line, all the way from Prahlad Maharaj, Vasudev Datta, so many devotees who had been expressing their desire to please Krishna. How? By being concerned about others, by trying to alleviate difficulties of others, because we see this is material world, it is Mrityu Loka, and everybody is such an inconvenient position, although everybody is trying to make some position that they're in very comfortable, very pleasurable. But how is that possible? Krishna himself states, Dukhalayam Shashvata. But everybody is so maddened, everybody is so foolish, trying to gratify themselves in so many various kinds of ways. But ultimately, how can they be satisfied? It's not possible, because the very place that we reside and we're trying to compete with others for any kind of satisfaction, it is just rendered impossible. So this is why devotees have that incredible compassion, that they try to alleviate everyone from their illusion and misconceptions that one can be happy in this material world. Srila Prabhupada was very clear about it. It's not possible. This world is not a place for a gentleman, and one should not waste time trying to make some temporary arrangements for some material happiness. So this is something that is just a futile endeavor. And for these reasons, devotee Devotees are paradukha dukhi or parasukha sukhi. They're happy when others are happy, and they're very sad when others are sad. And mostly everybody's sad. People just pretend to be happy, or they're just like Srila Prabhupada would say, they're happy when there is some temporary cessation of misery. So it is just a natural principle that every devotee who starts practicing spiritual life feels that compassion towards others and becomes more and more selfless in his spiritual pursuit. It is just very natural, again, quality that it's manifested. And for that reason, they're feeling so much love, just like Srila Prabhupada was very dear to everyone. And when he was asked why and how this is a case, so he said, because I just love everyone. Prabhupada didn't have, just like we hear about Yudhishthira Maharaj, he didn't have an enemy in this world, Agyata Shatru, no? He didn't have anyone who he would consider to be an enemy. So Srila Prabhupada was also very, very compassionate towards everyone, including, you would say, just we mentioned this Juhu story, including Mr. N. That was Srila Prabhupada's mercy, because if somebody continues troubling devotees, so it is mercy of a devotee to try to prevent them from such troubles, because they're putting themselves in more difficulty. So it's a devotee's mercy to not allow themselves to be troubled. And for sake of Krishna, again, sacrifice practically everything, for which ultimately everybody benefits. So this is the principle that all devotees naturally follow, to try to see how to preach, how to value the sacrifices, which is the subject of today's discussion, how to value the sacrifices of previous acharyas, Mahajano, Yenagata, Sapanta. Everybody had sacrificed so much, but again, as the expression of love, as the expression of gratitude. And gratitude is one of the qualities mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. That is the quality of intelligence. So devotees should be, and they are the most intelligent. They can recognize how they benefited from so much struggle and sacrifice of previous acharyas, spiritual masters. And therefore, they also follow in the same footsteps. Just like we know about the principle of repaying the debt to the spiritual master. That's what every disciple should try to act in such a way, or try to please the spiritual master. Try to be aware, again, of the sacrifice of the spiritual master, who takes so much trouble, and definitely takes so much trouble to elevate the consciousness of the disciple. And this is something that the disciple is not aware. We are not aware how much one has to sacrifice. It is very difficult. So when we talk about valuing such kind of sacrifice, it's not so easy, because we just don't understand what that sacrifice was, what that sacrifice is. It's just like sometimes it is very difficult to understand position of a parent until you become a parent, in a way. Then you can understand how much trouble your parents have taken to raise you. And again, there is a saying that it takes the whole village, right, to raise the child. That's also, it takes a lot of sacrifice. So, but specifically the parents are taking the greatest burden. So we also, as a community, as a whole society, are responsible for each and every individual by direct or indirect actions or teachings. And it takes so much difficulty, just like Srila Prabhupada would also say, it took me tons of blood to try to bring someone to higher consciousness, to make someone a devotee. So it's not an easy task. It requires a lot of sacrifice. And this is something that one doesn't understand, again, until maybe at some point one may understand intellectually and by hearing and overly being exposed to such kind of discussion or topic. But again, one will not understand it completely until one starts taking care of others. And this is our Guru Parampara. This is the principle that one just has to go through that. One has been preached and one has to continue preaching. This is what this whole movement is all about. Preaching is the essence. So therefore, when one also tries to counsel someone, then one has to take so much trouble. One has to sacrifice so much energy. One has to develop a lot of patience, tolerance. So many qualities one is forced practically to develop if one wants to benefit others. And then, at least I can speak from personal point of view, one has to be reminded again, even sometimes when one may come to the point of some discouragement, that how we also have been given so much time, we have been given so much energy, and at least to some extent we have to repay. We have to repay, as we said, we have to repay that debt, trying to perpetuate this principle of sacrifice, principle of compassion towards others, because ultimately, again, who benefits? Just like Srila Prabhupada would say, the principle is preaching. So if we preach and we benefit, others benefit, everybody else benefits. So there is no loss at any part. So we try to then repay the debt. But again, it's impossible to repay the debt. That's very interesting phenomenon. It's very interesting. You can't repay the debt because the more we also act upon the order, that very same order makes us more indebted. Now, it's very interesting because we follow the order again. And again, we become indebted. So how do you repay the debt? It's impossible. It's just endless principles that keeps on expanding. And it's impossible to repay it because we receive more and more mercy, because by service, we are becoming closer and closer to Krishna. We are becoming closer and closer. We are coming closer to spiritual master. So again, we are following the order, and then again, we become indebted. So the more we follow, the more we become indebted. So it's a most wonderful spiritual principle, because we know on the spiritual platform, everything is ever expanding, everything is ever blissful, everything is ever beneficial. So it's an eternal principle. The more we serve, the more we follow the order, the more we are becoming again indebted. But again, it is for our benefit, it is for benefit of everybody else. So this is why the principle of sacrifice is actually most wonderful. It is a spiritual principle and it purifies us all. But again, unless we take it very seriously, then it will become very difficult for us to have that realization. So what does that mean from the practical point of view? As we said, Srila Prabhupada wanted us to preach, Srila Prabhupada wanted us to share some of our realizations. So that means we have to sacrifice again. It's not easy to come out of certain comfort zone where we consider, yes, I have my morning sadhana, yes, maybe I have my daily routine or something. We are always expected to have some kind of additional, or to make some kind of additional effort in our spiritual practice. So it's not just sufficient that we become complacent by our daily so-called sadhana or routine. No, we have to come out of it. Just like we know, Srila Prabhupada, he was in Vrindavan, he had everything anybody would want to desire to peacefully leave this world, being Krishna conscious, but still there was an order that Srila Prabhupada had to fulfill, and he had to sacrifice. He had to sacrifice. He is the most wonderful position practically that anybody could desire at the end of one's life, to be Krishna conscious and go to Krishna. But again, the higher principle, the principle of sacrifice, Srila Prabhupada followed the order of his spiritual master. So that order Srila Prabhupada passed to us also. And as we said, this is the order of the whole Guru Parampara, that we keep on sacrificing, that we try to perceive how to fulfill that order again, whenever and under whichever circumstances that might be possible. So trying to preach, trying to sacrifice for others, trying to present this love of Krishna Prema, which Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to give to everyone. So as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would say, this is my only anxiety, how to distribute. I can't do this alone. I need help. So how do we assist? How do we help even Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Again, this whole principle is coming through Guru Parampara, that we try to sacrifice, that we try to give our time, give our energy, just like sometimes during book distribution, or when there is a marathon, a little more intense book distribution, or whatever, we go out, and it's not very pleasant often. We encounter so many difficulties, so many obstacles, so many purifications. But again, they're good for us, and they give us so much realization how Krishna reciprocates. How Krishna reciprocates. If we are Krishna conscious, if we take shelter of Krishna, and that's what means Krishna consciousness. So this whole principle of sacrifice, again, it's just a part of our spiritual development. And whenever we have the opportunity, we should actually grab it. We should try to just do something additional, something more, just like in the deity worship, one of the principles is four steady principles, regular principle. One of the principle is, one should do something additional. One should do something different for the pleasure of Krishna. Performing everything else as one should perform, but again, doing something additional, something more, something different for the pleasure of Krishna. So we might be having our daily routine, but we have to be very cautious that it doesn't become stale, that it doesn't become tasteless like this. Sometimes we refer to this as a swampy consciousness, just like, when the water is stale, it turns into swamp, not a very dynamic or purifying or beneficial place. Swamp is the place where mosquitoes breed, and frogs and snakes, and water it's undrinkable, and it's not a very nice place. So even spiritual life may tend to become very swampy like this, become very dull, very tasteless, and then we wonder, oh, what is wrong? I'm doing so many things, and I have my sadhana, I have so many engagements apparently, but nothing much has changed because our consciousness is still the same. We don't value this. We don't have a proper consciousness. It tends to become very mechanical. So therefore, one has to, again, just like Srila Prabhupada, and just like all the Srila Prabhupada's devotees who followed Srila Prabhupada, one has to become very dynamic. One has to be always ready to surrender, always ready to surrender to the instructions of the spiritual master and do something different, do something a little more additional, sacrifice a little more. And then again, one can come to understanding of the value of sacrifice that has been performed by Srila Prabhupada, that has been performed by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Then one can have that realization. And again, by having that realization, one will feel more inspired. That is just like, in the spiritual world, the relationships between Krishna and his devotees are always, they keep on inspiring each other, they keep on serving each other, and they all, by such kind of exchange, become, again, even more inspired, even more beautiful. All the qualities, keep on expanding, and everything becomes very dynamic, very blissful. So the same principle works here. That the more we sacrifice, the more we will become inspired to sacrifice, the more we will become blissful in Krishna consciousness. And therefore, we won't be tinged or touched by this material dullness, material laziness, lower modes of the material nature, lower consciousness, just thinking that there is some mechanical performance of devotional service going on. So then only when we take the responsibility, just like I gave in the beginning, that example of a parent. So we all have to become, to some extent, like parents. Then we can understand and value the position of a parent and how much somebody sacrificed for us. So how much Srila Prabhupada sacrificed for us, how much the devotees of Srila Prabhupada, who are our spiritual masters, have sacrificed for us. Then only we can understand by sacrificing for others, trying to give our time, trying to give our energy, trying to present whatever we know about Krishna consciousness. Because we know that's another principle in teaching. The more one is teaching, the more one teaches, the more one will understand the subject. So in the same way, the more we present this Krishna consciousness, again, then the more we will understand how much sacrificed again, Srila Prabhupada performed, and valuing this, we will be inspired to preach more. Otherwise, everything will just turn very stale in spiritual life, very dry. Sometimes there are these periods, and when we lose the taste, we struggle. It just becomes very mechanical. And then it should ring somewhere, it's like, okay, maybe it's time to refresh. And just like you have that refresh button, refresh, and then trying to do something different, trying to do something additional. Just thinking that Krishna consciousness is some kind of a side activity that is just a part of some daily routine, but trying to see how much we can sacrifice more and more and more and more. Of course, very often we are afraid that we might lose something by this, but again, that shouldn't be the case, because then we should seek inspiration of those who are, again, very active, how to become enthusiastic in spiritual life. Well, we have to act enthusiastically. We have to associate with those who are full of enthusiasm. Then definitely that will affect us, that will influence us. So that's what we have to seek. And that's why there is plenty, again, of sacrifice that has been performed by Srila Prabhupada and his disciples. And we have all of that sacrifice available. We have it available through Vapu, to some extent. We have it definitely available through Vani, through instructions, through lectures, through books. There's so much inspiration that can be drawn from all that sacrifice, again, that has been performed. Because the very word sacrifice, what does it mean? I mean, in English also, of course, but definitely through any other expression, what the principle of its meaning is to make something sacred. It's coming from the Latin word, to make something sacred. So what does it mean to make something sacred? That whenever we are performing certain activity, definitely we are doing it for Krishna. That's a sacrifice. So it's not for our own pleasure, it's not for our own some kind of gratification, but it's for pleasure of Krishna. It's for the pleasure even greater. Aradhananam sarvesham, Vishnu aradhanam param, tasmat parataram devi tadyanam samarchan. Of course, it's even better if we serve devotees of Krishna. It's even more beneficial, because first of all, of course, we don't know how to serve Krishna. It's another thing, but at least we can learn how to serve devotees of Krishna, and then we get so much more pleasure. We get so much more benefit, and Krishna is far more pleased, when we please someone who is pleased to him. So that's why that whole principle of sacrifice, of trying to please the devotees, trying to render service, trying to give our time, not just thinking about ourselves, our position, our so-called spiritual life. So then we see how much more we benefit, and we see how much more we advance, how much more our consciousness becomes purified, how much more that swampy, stale position that we are in becomes so dynamic, becomes so fresh, becomes so enlivening. And then again, we can appreciate, wow, how much really Srila Prabhupada did. It's not just we are hearing he did this, he did that. Yes, okay, very nice. No, but then we also become inspired, and we also start doing it to some extent, at least, whatever. But again, to that extent, we feel more blissful. We feel more appreciative to what others have been doing. So this is just like Srila Prabhupada pointed out. He said, in the way that I'm pushing you should also push others. So it requires some push. It requires some impetus. We require some encouragement. And this is why we live in an association of the devotees. If we would have been just on our own, nothing much would happen. So we kind of push each other. We inspire each other. We engage each other. And in this way, the whole that devotional principle of surrender, the whole principle of sacrifice, which we said it's an expression of love, which is an expression of gratitude, continues and just keeps on expanding more and more and more and more. And one just becomes more blissful in one's spiritual life. And this is why this the most essential principle is emphasized, because that is the essence of our parampara, that is the essence of our spiritual practice, to express that love, to first of all gain that love, gain some understanding, and again share it with others, and just becomes ever expanding, ever blissful. Okay, in the meantime, I just to emphasize, to add a little more, just like as I said, Lokanath Maharaj has written the book about the pastimes that had taken place here in the Hare Krishna land, and just again by reading this, if we just immerse ourselves in all those activities and all that the devotees have been involved in trying to procure the land and build the temple, and how they were inspired by serving Srila Prabhupada. They were so oblivious practically of so many difficulties that they had to face. It's just incredibly inspiring. And we see how Srila Prabhupada reciprocated, how Krishna reciprocated, how devotees have been so blissful in their practice of Krishna consciousness. So that principle is just so wonderful. So that's something that serves us as an inspiration, as something to also force ourselves to become more surrendered, to become more dedicated to the spiritual process. So that's why we are also grateful to His Holiness Lokanath Maharaj to present all those pastimes for our benefit, for our inspiration, so that we may also advance in the spiritual life. I think then we will stop here. Thank you all very much for giving me this opportunity again. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Radha Das Bihari ki jai. Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol.